I moved to Halbert about 3 weeks ago. I thought it would be a good place for a fresh start. I was a 34-year-old freelancer, looking for inspiration. At first, everything felt normal. The streets were quiet, and the old houses had a cozy charm. On my second night, I heard a strange tapping from the attic. It was rhythmic, like someone was knocking slowly. I thought it was just the old wood settling. A shiver ran down my spine, but I brushed it off as my imagination. I was just tired from unpacking. As days went by, the tapping got louder, and I started to hear muffled voices. They were accompanied by laughter, echoing through the house. It felt unsettling. My neighbors gathered at odd hours at the old Halbert home and gave me nervous glances. I started to feel uneasy. Why were they so wary of me? One afternoon, I decided to go for a walk. I needed to clear my head. The streets felt narrow, almost like tunnels. I heard whispers that drifted from the houses. I wanted to ask a neighbor if they had heard the noises too, but I felt frozen. It was as if the town was holding its breath around me. After my walk, I returned home and heard the tapping again. My heart raced as I listened. I called out, hoping for a response, but only silence replied. The air around me felt thick, weighing down on me. I thought about going to bed, but something held me back. That evening, it happened again. The tapping continued, but now there were low murmurs. I crept up to the attic door, my hands shook on the knob. Should I really confront whatever was up there? Just as I opened the door, I heard loud knocks that startled me. I jumped back and my heart pounded. I thought maybe it was just the wind. I glanced outside but saw nothing moving. I sat down on the steps, trying to catch my breath. Then I heard the laughter again, louder this time. It sounded like it was coming from inside my walls. I didn't know what to think. Maybe I was just imagining things. Looking at the neighbors coming and going, I felt exposed. They all seemed to know something I didn't. Who were they waiting for? What were they hiding? I turned back to my house, the chill creeping down my spine. I had to confront whatever was in the attic. I took a deep breath and stepped back toward the door. Just then, I caught a glimpse of a figure in the attic. My breath caught in my throat. I wasn't sure what I had seen, but it felt wrong. Maybe it was just a trick of the light, but I hoped not. The tapping and laughter faded for the moment, but I knew they would come back. The weight of the town's secrets pressed down on me. I could feel it, hiding beneath the surface. I didn't know how much longer I could take it. The next day, unease settled over me like a heavy fog. I couldn't shake the thought of that figure in the attic. I decided it was time to talk to someone. I grabbed my coat and headed outside. The street was quieter than usual. I walked toward the neighbor's house across the way, the one with the peeling paint and a crooked fence. It looked lived in but neglected. I knocked, my heart drumming in my chest. A moment later, an elderly woman opened the door. Her eyes were wary, as if sizing me up. "Can I help you?" she asked, her voice unfriendly. I introduced myself and mentioned my weird experience. Her expression shifted slightly, a flicker of recognition crossing her face. "You don't want to go up there," she warned, glancing back as if she heard something behind her. "There are stories about the old houses in this town." "What stories?" I pressed, feeling a mix of curiosity and dread. She hesitated, biting her lip. "People say things happen in places like that. That you shouldn't disturb what has been forgotten." I felt my throat tighten. "What do you mean? Forgotten?" "The ones who lived there before. They didn't just leave," she replied cryptically. Her gaze was distant, as if she were remembering something painful. "You should be careful. The past has a way of creeping back." Before I could ask another question, she shut the door, leaving me alone on the porch. My mind raced. What did she know? I turned to go back home, but the hairs on my arms prickled. I had the feeling I was being watched. I rushed inside and locked the door behind me. The house was still and quiet. The tapping had returned, faint but insistent, echoing from the attic. I took a deep breath, my stomach churning. I needed to know what was up there. That I climbed the stairs, each creak making me hesitate. The attic door loomed ahead. I reached for the knob, hand trembling. This time, I couldn't back down. As I opened the door, the tapping stopped. The silence felt deafening. That I stepped inside, my heart racing. Dust motes floated in the air, and the low light barely illuminated the space. Boxes and old furniture sat in disarray, covered in layers of dust. I scanned the room, searching for any sign of the figure I had seen. And that's when I noticed it, a small, ornate mirror tucked away in the corner. Its surface was cloudy, reflecting distorted shapes. Something about it pulled me closer. I reached for it, my fingers brushing against the frame, feeling a chill pass through me. Suddenly, the laughter returned, echoing in my ears like a memory I couldn't recall. The shadows in the attic seemed to shift, and the atmosphere thickened. My heart raced as I realized this was only the beginning. Then everything went dark. The lights flickered off, plunging me into a chilling darkness. I had to get out. I stumbled back, my breath hitching in my throat as the oppressive darkness surrounded me. The faint outline of the mirror was all I could see, but now it felt more menacing than intriguing. I turned, desperate to find the attic door, but the world around me shifted. The shadows seemed to elongate, creeping closer. "Hello." I called out, my voice shaky and barely a whisper. Silence responded, thick and unsettling. I fumbled for my phone in my pocket, fingers trembling as I switched on the flashlight. The beam cut through the darkness, revealing dust-coated boxes and delicate cobwebs hanging like curtains in the corners. Something about the attic felt alive, as if it held its breath, waiting for me to make a move. That's when I noticed the mirror again. The surface shimmered strangely, almost rippling, as if something were trying to break free from its confines. I took a cautious step closer, and the air chilled around me. My heartbeat thudded in my ears, drowning out the whispers of the past that seemed to swirl around me. Suddenly, I heard a soft giggle, clear and childlike, echoing faintly in the silence. It sent a jolt of terror through me. Who was laughing? My instinct screamed for me to leave, but I was magnetized to the mirror, drawn to it against my better judgment. With a shaky hand, I reached out again. This time, the cold that emanated from the glass was biting. As my fingers brushed the surface, a vision flashed before my eyes. A darkened room, scattered toys, and laughter turned to sobbing. I jerked my hand back as if burned. The mirror had shown me something, someone lost in time. Breathing heavily, I stumbled away, but the laughter grew louder, filling the attic. It felt like it was surrounding me, closing in. Panic surged, and I turned to make my escape when I heard a different sound, a soft thud, heavy and deliberate, coming from behind me. That I whirled around, flashlight beam jittering as I aimed it at the source. My heart stopped. There, in the shadows cast by the dim light, stood a figure, shrouded in darkness. I couldn't see their features, but I felt their gaze pierce through me. "Who are you?" I managed to choke out, feeling my pulse quicken. The figure didn't answer. Instead, it moved toward me slowly, deliberately. I could see now that it was a child, no older than 7 or 8, wearing a tattered dress. The laughter faded into a deep silence, replaced by an eerie calm that felt anything but comforting. Somehow, I knew I shouldn't be there. I needed to leave. Without thinking, I dashed for the attic door, but it wouldn't budge. My muscles strained as I pulled on the knob, panic fueling my efforts. The figure was getting closer, and my breath quickened with every inch it advanced. One last desperate yank, and the door burst open. I stumbled out, nearly tripping down the stairs, and I slammed the door shut behind me. My heart raced as I pressed my back against the cold wood, panting. The laughter still echoed in my mind. I needed answers, but now I was terrified of what I might find. Who was that child? I couldn't shake the feeling that this was only the beginning of something much darker. As I stood there, I heard a faint scratching sound on the other side of the door. My stomach dropped. I realized I wasn't alone in the house anymore, and whatever had been in the attic had followed me down. I pressed my ear against the attic door, heart pounding as the scratching grew louder. It sounded small, almost like fingers dragging across the wood. My mind raced with wild thoughts. What if that child was still there? What if it wanted to come out? I stepped back cautiously, unsure of where to go next. The hallway was dark, and I questioned whether I should risk the stairs or find a place to hide. The scratching stopped abruptly, replacing the sound with silence that felt heavy and suffocating. Taking a deep breath, I turned to face the stairs again. If I could get to the living room, I could call for help. Maybe I could convince myself that it had all been a strange nightmare. I slipped down the stairs slowly, every creak of the wood sounding like a gunshot in the quiet. As I reached the bottom, I froze. The living room was dimly lit by the eerie glow coming from the windows. I instinctively glanced behind me to the attic door, half expecting it to burst open. Nothing. It remained shut, but I could feel the weight of something uninvited behind it, lurking in the shadows. I stepped into the living room, and that's when I noticed something strange, a small toy on the floor. It was a delicate porcelain figure of a little girl with a wide smile, her eyes gleaming even in the low light. I furrowed my brow, unable to shake the feeling that I had seen it before. A chill ran down my spine as I recalled the child in the attic. I picked it up cautiously, turning it over to inspect for any markings. Just beneath the dress, I saw a name etched in tiny letters, Lucy. Lucy? I whispered, feeling the air grow heavier as I said her name. Before I could process the implications, a faint voice echoed from behind me. Don't leave me. I spun around, dropping the toy as my head whipped back toward the attic door. The voice was small and frightened, sending tremors through my body. I took a hesitant step back, but the floor creaked loudly. Please, the voice continued, now infused with desperation. I want to play. My mind raced as I tried to comprehend the situation. Who was Lucy? What did she want? My instinct was to run, but something kept me rooted to my spot. What if the child needed help? The air turned colder as I stood there. The scratching sound returned, now layered with soft sobs that grew louder, reverberating through the house. I squeezed my eyes shut, trying to banish the fear creeping in, but when I opened them again, I saw her. Lucy's figure stood at the top of the staircase, illuminated by a sliver of light filtering through the window. Her face was void of emotion, her dark hair falling over her eyes. The tattered dress flared slightly as she stepped closer. Why did you leave? She asked, her voice childlike yet tinged with anguish. The question sent a jolt of dread through me. Before I could respond, I heard more sounds, thudding footsteps approaching from the back of the house. My breath caught in my throat. I wasn't just hearing things. Someone was in the house with me. Panic surged as I turned to run, but Lucy raised a hand, and the air thickened. Stay, she whispered, loud enough to shatter my resolve. I froze, torn between the sounds of someone else approaching and the fragile plea of the child. I had to decide. Then everything went dark. When the darkness lifted, I found myself still standing in the living room, but the atmosphere had changed. The light from the windows had dimmed further, casting elongated shadows across the walls. I felt disoriented, as if time had shifted while I was enveloped in oblivion. And then I heard it, a soft giggle, delicate and eerie. I spun around, searching for the source. Lucy was gone. I called her name, but my voice seemed swallowed by the oppressive silence. I took a hesitant step forward, instincts screaming at me to flee, yet an undeniable pull urged me to stay. The porcelain figure lay at my feet, staring up at me as if waiting for me to make a move. I bent down to pick it up again. There had to be answers within this scene, but the questions multiplied. Lucy? I said, my voice trembling. What is happening? No reply came. Instead, I felt a tremor in the floor beneath me. Time felt thick, like molasses, as if something was building around me. The air grew denser, and I could almost hear the quiet thumping of my heart. Then I remembered the footsteps. They were still echoing in my mind, but I realized they were closer, not retreating. Panic surged again, and I glanced toward the hallway leading to the back of the house. Just as I did, the front door swung open with a loud creak, causing me to jump. A silhouette stepped inside, a tall figure cast in shadow. My stomach knotted as I tried to determine whether it was an intruder or someone who could help me escape this madness. "Hello?" I called, trying to keep my voice steady. No response. Just the echo of the door closing as the figure moved further into the living room. I felt like prey cornered by an unseen predator. "Who is there?" Silence followed. The figure was lurking just outside of the light. I squinted, hoping to catch a glimpse, but it was no use. "Lucy?" I called out again, my voice wavering. Suddenly, the figure stepped into the faint light, and my breath caught in my throat. It was a woman, her face pale, eyes hollow and dark. She was wearing what looked like an old-fashioned dress, one similar to Lucy's but more tattered and worn. "Get away!" she shouted, launching toward me with unexpected speed. I stumbled back, driven by instinct, nearly tripping over the porcelain figure. "Please!" I yelled, backing into the wall behind me. "I don't want to hurt you." Her hands twisted into claws, and panic engulfed me. "You should have left," she screeched, an echoing fury. "You brought her back." In that moment, everything clicked. Lucy the woman. Who was she? Then, a horrifying realization struck me. If she was connected to Lucy, then what did it mean for both of them? Just as I searched for a way to escape, something cold grazed my ankle. I looked down to see Lucy's porcelain figure rolling toward the doorway, beckoning me. Without thinking, I turned and darted for it, but my foot snagged on something, sending me crashing to the floor. The world spun, and dread consumed me as I heard the woman's footsteps grow closer. I had to get to that figure. Then everything else would make sense. If it didn't, I might not see the light again. I scrambled to my feet, heart pounding as I chased after Lucy's figure, still rolling just ahead of me. The edge of the porcelain kept slipping away like a distant dream. I lunged forward, arms outstretched, desperate to reach it before the woman reached me. Then I heard it a low whisper, but it wasn't coming from the woman. It slithered through the room, wrapping around me like a cold fog. "Help me," it said. I halted, my fingers just grazing the figure's surface. The whisper was familiar, softer than the woman's screams but deeper than Lucy's giggles. My skin prickled, and I was torn between the figure and the suffocating urge to escape the woman who charged toward me. Desperate, I grabbed the porcelain figure. The moment my hand closed around it, a rush of cold air swept through the room and the whisper stopped. I looked up, but the woman had paused, her eyes widening as if she recognized something. "What did you do?" Her voice wavered, suddenly less aggressive. Confusion flickered across her face, but then rage returned, brighter than before. "You shouldn't have touched her." "Touched who?" I yelled, trying to sound brave. "Is this Lucy or someone else?" My mind raced, trying to piece together the fragments. I knew I was treading dangerously close to something dark, something I couldn't quite grasp. The woman stepped closer, and I instinctively raised the porcelain figure like a shield. "You need to leave. You don't understand." With her arms reaching toward me, I felt the air recoil. It was as if a pulse surged through the porcelain, and I could almost hear a heartbeat mirroring my own. I remembered the whispers. They weren't just in my head. They felt like fragments of a past long buried. "Please." I pressed, desperation sharpening my words. "If you're trying to protect Lucy, then tell me." Her expression faltered. For a heartbeat, I saw more than the rage, I saw fear, a flicker of grief that painted her features like a haunting glow. "She belongs to me. I never wanted her to leave." The weight of her words settled on my shoulders. I already felt the chaos closing in, but something was pulling at the edges of my mind. I noticed the walls around us seemed to pulse with shadows, trying to escape their confines. There had to be more to this than a simple toy. Then help me understand. I shouted again, trying to draw her attention back, but the shadows shifted, darkening her expression. Suddenly, the air shifted. A new presence emerged, chilling the space even further. I turned to see dark shapes gathering at the corners of the room, looming figures forming from the shadows. They moved closer, and a feeling of dread crashed into me. What is happening? The woman shrieked, her scream twisted like shards of glass. They come for her. I looked around, panic flooding my veins. The darkness surged, pressing in from every side, suffocating any thought of defense. My grip on Lucy's figure tightened. I had to hold on, had to find a way to break free. But just then, the porcelain fired a blinding light. In that instant, the shadows recoiled. Everything went silent. Then I saw it. A door forming in the back of the room, light spilling from it like a beacon. Get to the door. The woman shouted, her voice frantic. But I hesitated, caught between the past and my widening future. Who should I trust? I screamed, feeling the darkness lurking just beyond reach. Lucy needs you. She urged, desperation laying bare in her eyes. Torn, I took a step toward the light. A choice loomed before me, but just as I felt hope rush in, the shadows lunged forward, tearing through the air. I had to decide: stay and confront whatever this darkness was, or slip through that doorway, leaving confusion and fear behind. I took a breath, my heart hammering against my ribs. There was fear in the air, thick and suffocating. The darkness loomed, but the light from the door felt like hope. I made my decision. As I darted toward the doorway, I could hear the woman's voice trailing behind me, screaming my name. I didn't look back. I dove for the threshold, and the world exploded in light as I crossed the threshold. I landed on cool, hard ground. The light receded, leaving me in a dimly lit hallway. My breath came in shaky bursts, but I felt a strange weight lift off my chest. Glancing around, I found myself in a narrow corridor lined with faded portraits hanging on peeling walls. They looked like they had seen better days, just like everything else in this place. Where am I? I muttered to myself, confusion swirling as I took a few steps forward. The air felt thick with something unnameable, heavy with unspoken stories. I pressed my back against the wall, trying to calm my racing thoughts. Then I heard it again, the whisper. Help me. This time, it was stronger, echoing around me. I focused on it, following the sound as it led me down the hall. It echoed like a heartbeat, growing more insistent. Desperate curiosity pushed me forward, but dread curled in my stomach that I reached a door at the end of the corridor. It looked warped, like wood that had twisted with age. As I reached for the handle, the whispers grew frantic. Help us. Help us. I hesitated, my hand hovering in front of the knob. Who was asking for help? I wanted to believe it was Lucy, but another flicker of uncertainty crept in. What if it was something darker? With a sudden rush of adrenaline, I twisted the knob and pushed the door open. It creaked loudly, and I winced at the sound. I stepped inside and gasped. The room was a large attic filled with dusty stacks of old boxes, cobwebs stretching between the beams like ghostly tendrils. At the center of the room stood a small table, and on it lay objects: dolls, tarnished trinkets, and a porcelain figure that looked eerily similar to the one I had just escaped with. I approached carefully, drawn to the figure. My fingers tingled as I reached out, memories flickering, just out of reach. That whisper, it felt like a promise and a warning all at once. Before I could grab it, a chilling gust swept through the attic, and the door slammed shut behind me. Panic surged through me. I turned, but it wouldn't budge. I was trapped. Then I saw them. The dark shapes from the hallway slithered into the room. Their forms twisted and writhed, moving closer. She belongs to us. They hissed, their voices a cacophony of despair and rage. A flash of realization hit me. These weren't just shadows. They were the echoes of lost souls, chained to something I hadn't fully comprehended yet. I had to get out. I had to do something before they engulfed me. The porcelain figure on the table caught my eye. Maybe it held the answer. I lunged for it just as the shadows reached out, grasping fingers clawing at my legs. No. I cried out, but I couldn't stop. I needed to know what the figure held. Just then, a blinding light erupted again, the shadows recoiling, and I felt the pull of the porcelain stronger than before. As I touched it, an image flashed in my mind, a memory, a face I recognized. That was when I realized, the past was just a story. It was a warning, and if I didn't solve it soon, I might lose everything I had left. I felt an electric shock run through me as my fingers brushed the porcelain figure. The image flooded my mind, a face that was hauntingly familiar, but I couldn't place it. Panic churned in my stomach. The shadows hissed. I needed answers, but what if the truth was worse than I imagined? Help us! They screeched, their voices clawing at my sanity. I grabbed the figure and lifted it close. Beneath the dust, I saw intricate markings on its base, letters that twisted into shapes I could almost read. But the room was shifting, warping at the edges. I couldn't remain here. With a surge of resolve, I held the figure tightly. What do you want? I shouted at the specters. Their faces twisted in anger, and I could feel their icy breath against my skin. They screamed back, "You cannot escape our fate." Desperate, I turned toward the door, pressing my shoulder against it. "Let me out!" I cried, pushing with every ounce of strength. The wood vibrated beneath my weight, but it held firm. Frustrated, I looked back at the figure. There had to be something more, some connection I wasn't seeing. That in a moment of clarity, I recalled snippets of conversation I'd overheard before this nightmare began, the townsfolk talking about the Halberts, about rituals and secrets buried just beneath the surface. This figure, it felt like it held a piece of that past. The shadows lunged forward, their fingers brushing my skin, cold and clammy. I jerked away, but my grip on the porcelain tightened. The figure felt alive in my hands. Could it be the key to breaking the spell that bound these souls? I squinted at the markings. The letters were Greek. My heart raced. I remembered my grandfather teaching me the language. Entheos, I whispered under my breath, a spirit's presence. The shadows hesitated, their movements faltering as if caught in a web of confusion. "What did you say?" One of them hissed, its voice softer now. "Maybe I can help you," I said, my voice trembling but steady. "If you tell me how." Suddenly, the attic darkened further. A different shadow appeared, a figure that loomed larger than the rest. This one didn't scream. It simply watched. My heart pounded relentlessly. Who was this one? Was this the one in the memory? The one I had to face? The air shifted again, swirling with energy that prickled my skin. I pressed my back against the door, fighting the urge to flee. This was an opportunity, a moment to understand what I had stumbled upon. Before I could process it, the larger shadow reached out a gnarled hand. "Find the truth buried within. You will not be alone." Then everything went dark. The floor shook beneath me, and I could no longer see anything. A chilling, suffocating silence set in as panic rose in my throat. What had I done? I was swallowed by shadows, lost in that heavy void, the porcelain figure slipping from my fingers. I had angered something powerful, something that yearned for release. As the darkness enveloped me, I sensed that this was just the beginning. When the light returned, I would have to face the consequences of my choices. There was no turning back now. I woke up gasping, heart racing. The room was dim, but the familiar sense of dust and decay surrounded me. I was still in the attic, crouched against the wall. My limbs ached, and I could barely remember how I had landed there. Confusion washed over me, but there was no time to linger on it. That I reached for the porcelain figure, but it was gone. Panic surged through me as I scrambled to my feet, searching the darkened corners of the attic. My fingers brushed against the rough wooden beams. No, 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 I muttered, desperation creeping into my voice. Where was it? That S when I heard it soft, almost like a whisper. Help us. The shadows remained, but they felt more distant now. I scanned the room, feeling the weight of their presence, hovering just out of sight. I could sense they were waiting for something. The larger shadow from before lingered in the periphery, a constant reminder of its warning that I needed clarity, a way through this haunting maze. Remembering my grandfather's teachings, I focused on the words I had spoken earlier. Entheos, I repeated, hoping it would work again. The air felt electric, charged with anticipation. Suddenly, there was a shimmer in the darkness. A faint light flickered in the corner of the room. It brightened, revealing an old trunk that I had somehow missed before. The hinges looked rusted, as if it hadn't been opened in years. Instinctively, I took a step closer, curiosity wrestling with fear. That S when I saw it, the markings on the trunk were identical to those on the porcelain figure. My heart raced again. Perhaps this trunk held secrets about the Halberts and their rituals. I knew I had to know who they were if I was ever going to help the trapped souls. My fingers traced the engravings as I knelt down. What are you hiding? I whispered. The shadows shifted in response. They were growing restless, urging me to act. With a deep breath, I forced the trunk open. It creaked loudly. Inside, I found old letters and photographs, their edges yellowed with age. My breath caught when I saw a photograph of a woman. It was her, the face from my vision. I remembered now. As I examined the photograph, something shifted in the room. The shadows seemed to close in tighter. No. I cried, my heart sinking. They didn't want this revealed. Suddenly, a cold wind rushed past me, extinguishing the faint light. I stumbled back, blinded in the darkness. I felt fingers brush my skin again, but this time I couldn't breathe. Fear gripped my heart. Stop! I yelled, panic rising. And just like that, the grip released. In the silence that followed, I heard one whisper again, more urgent this time. Finish what we started. I didn't know what that meant, but I was determined to find out. I had opened a door to something dark and dangerous, but I had no choice. I had to uncover the truth, even if it meant facing whatever awaited me next. As the shadows shifted once more, I felt a deep sense of foreboding that whoever the woman was, she was tied deeply to the secrets of the Halberts. And I was just scratching the surface. I stumbled backward, gasping for breath as shadows swirled around me. The air felt thicker, like a living thing, pressing against my skin. The photograph of the woman slipped from my grip and fluttered to the floor. I bent down, trying to pick it up, but just as my fingers brushed the edge, a voice echoed through the attic, the same haunted whisper. Finish what we started. The words rang in my ears, and my heart raced. Who was this woman in the photograph? What had she begun? I needed answers, but the shadows seemed to be closing in, pulling me into their dark embrace. I couldn't shake the feeling that they were tied to her, to Lucy. Maybe they were both trapped in this nightmare, waiting for someone to set them free. Before I could think, I dashed for the trunk, desperate to sift through the letters and photographs. I yanked them out, scattering them across the dusty attic floor. Each moment felt like an eternity, and my pulse quickened as I read the names scrawled in fading ink. Some were familiar townsfolk who'd given me wary looks. Others were strangers, their lives connected by an unseen thread to this place and its past. That I paused at a letter addressed to a Lucinda, written in frantic strokes. It spoke of rituals and darkness, family secrets buried deep within the walls of the Halbert home. The words twisted my stomach. The shadows are restless, they want her back. My breath quickened. Lucinda, was that Lucy? Had she been taken? Suddenly, the temperature dropped, and the shadows writhed closer, the harsh whisper growling, "You can't hide her." Panic surged through me. I could almost see their faces now, flickering like candlelight, flashing between anguish and rage. It was a warning, a reminder that I was trespassing on their grief. That I scanned the letters for any mention of a way to help them, but before I could find anything concrete, the larger shadow surged forward, loud and furious. "Leave!" it thundered, cracking the very air around me. I felt paralyzed with fear. The porcelain figure pulsed in my hand, its coldness fueling my resolve. "Help me!" I screamed, desperation clawing at my throat. The shadows recoiled slightly, and quiet followed, a silence so deafening I could almost hear my own heartbeat. Then, as if sensing my fear, the darkness attacked. It swept closer, wrapping around me like heavy fog. The whispers became a cacophony of terror. "Finish it!" they howled. The imagery began to merge, the photograph of the woman, the rituals described in the letters, and the connection to Lucy. They all pointed toward a deeper horror lurking in the house. An idea flickered in my mind, fragile yet powerful. If I could return the porcelain figure to the woman whose spirit lingered, maybe, just maybe, something would change. "Lucy," I whispered, "if you can hear me, I'll help you." My fingers tightened around the figure, and I felt the rush of energy coursing through it, a connection pulling me toward the door. The shadows hissed as I moved toward the staircase, and I sprinted down, fear pounding in my ears. Once in the living room, daylight poured in from the windows, but it felt tainted somehow, the light fighting against the shadows that sprawled across the corners of the room. That I stood still for a moment, wondering if I should leave through the door. Just as a sliver of hope flickered in my chest, a loud crash rattled the house, a picture frame shattered on the floor. Now, urgency clenched at my gut. I sprinted to the front door and burst outside, the chill of the air hitting my skin. I would find the answers I needed, but a quick glimpse back revealed the attic door swinging open, the shadows beckoning me once more. That I shuddered, feeling their pull, their whispers clawing for my attention. I ran to my car parked at the end of the driveway, and as I fumbled in my bag for my phone, I glimpsed the porcelain figure nestled in my coat pocket, there like a promise whispering of things left unfinished. With shaking hands, I called the local police, my voice trembling as I described my experiences, omitting crucial details. I didn't need them to label me insane. But as the operator assured me they would send someone, doubt crept in. How could they help with the darkness tethered within those walls, haunting Lucy and the others? As I hung up and stared at my reflection in the rearview mirror, I glanced back at the house. A chill gripped me, making my hands shake. I had escaped for now, but a deeper fear settled into my bones. I still needed to face the truth behind those shadows, behind Lucy and whatever darkness had claimed her. That I took a deep breath, vowing as I drove away, I would return. I would search for the answers, even if they led me back into the shadows. Something told me this wouldn't be over until the last remnants of that past were confronted. I moved forward, but uncertainties trailed behind, questions swirling with every turn I took, lingering like the echoes of laughter I swore I would hear again.